Okay, so can you hear me in this one?
Yeah.
Fine. Okay, so the problems that we are looking at here are problems with preferences. These are our problems with goal-dense search spaces, so we'll see what those are in a minute. So let's look at our heuristics and what they tell us. So here's a classic driver log problem from the IBC. We need some guidance to guide search from our initial state to our goal state. And what we use a lot in planning is a distance to go estimate. Wheeler's been talking about how great these are. So we look at the number of actions in a relaxed problem. So we generate this relaxed problem by ignoring the delete effects, and we can calculate a plan for this problem in polynomial time. And this plan contains actions to achieve all of the goals. When we have a planning problem with preferences, we've now got the same goal, same problem, but what we're going to do is turn every goal into a preference. So now, every state is a goal state, effectively. We can choose not to achieve all of these goals. All we do is pay a cost for each preference we violate. So how many actions do we need to find a goal state in this problem? None. Because every state's a goal state, h of s equals 0. And what is the best preference violation cost that can be reached? Well, assuming our original problem is solvable, then actually we can satisfy all these preferences. So the best preference violation cost we can reach is 0. We can satisfy all of these preferences. This is incidentally an admissible heuristic that we can use for pruning. If we can't satisfy a preference in a relaxed problem, there's no way we can satisfy it in a real problem. But we'll come back to that later. So something we learn from this is that cost and distance are inseparable. So if we want to have a relaxed plan that achieves all our preferences, then that's going to have a high distance to go. We've got to do a lot of work to achieve all our preferences. If we want to have a cheap, if we're happy to take any old solution, then our distance to go is going to be shorter. And in fact, there's only one case where h of s is 0 and v of s are 0 at the same place, and that is when we've satisfied all the preferences and we don't need to do anything else. Otherwise, in general, a small distance to go means we violate a lot of preferences, and a big cost means we need a short distance to go. So this is a planning benchmark taken from the 2006 International Planning Competition. This is the initial state of this problem. And we can see that if we want to get to a cost of 0, we've got to a relaxed plan of just over 30 steps. So that's our distance to get to that cost. If we're happy to get to a cost of 80, I should say 0 is good, so we're talking about cost here. If we want to get to a cost of 80, we've only got to do a relaxed plan of about 10 steps long. So we had a planner in ICAPS 2011, it was called LPRGP, and what it considered was building relaxed plans to satisfy all the preferences that were reachable from the given state. So if a preference appears in the relaxed planning graph, we can satisfy it, we'll satisfy it. So we are minimising the violation cost. And we're using this cost in an anytime search setting, sorry Wheeler, to try and find a plan better than the cost C. So we found some solution, or if we're starting off and C might be infinite, and we just want to find a cost that's better than the solution we've seen so far, and we're going to keep going in anytime search. And this at the time was the state of the art in planning. And we also evaluated just taking the heuristic value to satisfy the hard goals. So the length of the relaxed plan to satisfy the hard goals. Predictably, this is rubbish, because most of the time it's 0. A lot of the time we don't have any hard goals, so researching with the heuristic of 0, not a very good idea. So one thing we realised, and this was actually watching Wheeler's talk last year, is one thing we're kind of blind to how near we might be to a state that's a bit better. So we're focused on, let's try and satisfy everything, we're looking at the distance of a state to do that, but actually there might be a state right under our nose that has a slightly better cost than one we found, and we're just ignoring that. So we want to somehow balance this. We want to achieve a globally good solution, but the quicker we can get a new best solution, the better our pruning is, and pruning is obviously good. So this is a depiction of a relaxed plan. So the boxes are facts, the arrows are actions. And in the classical case, a relaxed plan, every action in it achieves the precondition of some action that eventually achieves the goal. So we work backwards. Every action is there for a reason, and that reason is that it supports a goal. So I'm not going to go into detail of this because this is a whole other talk, but what we can do if we have a problem with preferences, and here I'm talking about the full range of PDDL3 preferences, it's not really important what they are, but say we have a preference sometime A and B, and this hasn't been satisfied, then we can add extra goals to the relaxed planning graph to say, okay, we want to satisfy these goals to achieve this preference. So we can think of preferences as just adding extra goals to be satisfied to the relaxed plan. And if we've got a plan like this, then unlike in the classical case, what we can actually do is we can leave some actions out of the relaxed plan, and the relaxed plan will still reach the goal, because it will just not satisfy all the preferences. So the bare minimum of what we can do is we could just keep all the actions to achieve all the hard goals, and that will give us a distance to go estimate. So what we're going to do, instead of just looking at satisfying all the goals or none of the preferences, we're going to create a range of heuristic values by keeping different values, different heuristic estimates to satisfy different subsets of preferences. So it's a two-step process. First of all, we need to annotate each step in the relaxed plan with the preferences that is there to support. And then we're going to generate several relaxed plans that satisfy different subsets of preferences. So as we extract a relaxed plan, we annotate each action. So a relaxed plan now, instead of being a list of actions, it's a set of action annotation pairs. And an annotation is either a special value H, which says this is to achieve a hard goal, or it is a label of which preferences that action is in to blame. So if we go back to our relaxed plan here, say we have three preferences. So we are choosing to satisfy P0, we've chosen this blue action up here, and satisfy P1, we've chosen this red action. And what we can do when we extract the relaxed plan is each time we add a new fact as a precondition of an action, we can just propagate backwards the labels. So we can end up with a labelled relaxed plan of which actions are in there to achieve which preferences. And then we can define some different sets. So the hard actions in pi, the hard pairs, are all actions such that they have to be in there to achieve the hard goals. We can't leave those out. And the soft actions are all the other actions. So any action we have a choice about whether or not we're going to put that in the relaxed plan. So in here, all the black actions are the hard actions, and anything else is a soft action. We can choose to leave that out if we want to. And the preferences that led to actions being added to the plan is any preference that appears in any annotation set. Now that might seem obvious, but some preferences don't actually need actions to be added to the plan. They are satisfied by the ordering of the plan, or they're satisfied by something not happening. So we just have this set of preferences, in this case P0, P1, P2. And finally, the actions relevant to each preference are any action which has that preference in its annotation set. So the actions relevant here to P0 are the blue ones and the pink ones and the black ones here. So now how can we derive a relaxed plan? Well, we're going to choose some subset of the preferences that we could satisfy using this relaxed plan. And then we're going to construct a relaxed plan containing all the steps relevant to those preferences, along with all the hard goals. So it's basically a relaxed plan that satisfies some subset of preferences. And we now have a heuristic distance to go estimate. The distance to go is the length of the relaxed plan. There are two questions. Easy one, hard one. Easy one, what's the cost associated with this? Harder one, how do we choose which subsets of P we're going to think about? So we'll start with the easy one. The preferences that are not satisfied by the relaxed plan are those for which at least one relevant action has not been included. Now this is a bit of an assumption because if you could have accidentally achieved the preference by achieving some other action. But we're just going to make this assumption here. You could run through your relaxed plan and see which ones are satisfied. So any preferences, we're going to say they're not satisfied if we've not achieved all their relevant actions. And to get the cost for this relaxed plan, we can simply sum the costs of violating those preferences that we didn't achieve. And in domains of action costs, we can do a little bit better. So it's not only the cost of the preferences that we violated, but it's also going to add on the cost of any actions that are in the plan. So that's a net benefit idea. And now we have a length cost pair. So the length is the length of the relaxed plan, and the cost is the cost according to whichever one of these two functions you would like to use. Now this is the harder question. So we've got a set of preferences. In theory, we could look at the relaxed plans for all subsets of preferences, and we could get a Pareto for it of length cost pairs. Predictably, this fails to scale to large problems. You don't have to take my word for it. I'll show you some results later. So instead, we're going to use a greedy algorithm to choose which sets of preferences we're going to satisfy. So we're going to start with an empty set of preferences and the relaxed plan just to achieve the hard goals. Okay, and we will record that to start with. And then we're going to choose the best preference in the preferences we could satisfy. We'll decide what best means later. And we're going to add that preference and add its relevant actions. And then we're going to record the length cost pair. So effectively, we're adding the preferences one at a time to our set to be achieved. And then we're just going to repeat it until we've achieved all sets of preferences. And we actually consider two best criteria. So we consider adding the preference that means we have to add the fewest actions to the relaxed plan, or we considered adding the best cost increase. So if the preference is really expensive, we'll add that first. So those are our two ways. We do a greedy by length or a greedy by cost. And if we go back to our problem that we were looking at originally, you can see that these somehow approximate the Pareto for in this particular problem, cost is better. Actually, in general, we see there's no general thing that cost or length is better. It depends on the problem. So we get some approximation to this Pareto for it. So now we've got length cost pairs. How are we going to change this into heuristic? And this is similar to just what Patrick's been talking about now. And so we've got some length cost pairs, and we want to find a plan, remember, that's just better than the one we've got. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the shortest relaxed plan that takes us to a state where the cost is better than the global cost we've seen before. So we've generated all these pairs. We're going to take one distance to go estimate, and that's the distance to the nearest state, or what we think is the nearest state, with a better cost. Now this heuristic is cost bound sensitive, so it estimates the difference to a goal with cost better than C. And if no low enough cost option exists, we're going to use an infinite value. One thing you should note, the costs here are not guaranteed to be admissible. We don't want to use this for pruning, but we can use the reachable preferences for pruning. So don't use your inadmissible heuristic for pruning. And then we've got to search with this new heuristic. And a good question always to ask in planning is, what would Malta do? Malta has an idea for everything. So we have two heuristic estimates. We have H-all, and this is guiding us to a globally good solution. And we have H is less than C. So this is guiding us to our nearby new best goal state. So what we're going to do is do what fast downward did. We're doing dual open list alternation, best first search. So one open list is sorted by H-all, and one open list is sorted by H less than C. And what we're going to do is expand a node off each, and then evaluate its successes according to both, and put them on both open lists. And this is good because we don't want to get blinded by looking for nearby solutions and lose our overall global view of the goal. So we want to progress towards all preferences and also progress towards a new best goal state. And there is one problem here, that using H less than C, obviously we're extracting lots of relaxed plans instead of just one. So we've got memory overheads and time overheads, and we're storing all length cost pairs of each state. And we also get a systematic bias in the H all open list compared to using it alone. So when you expand good states according to H less than C, this gives us states with lower H all, but that might be because preferences have become unreachable in those states. So now to satisfy all the preferences that we can reach, well, we only need a shorter relaxed plan. So it's not really satisfying the idea of going towards H all. Now, early in search, this is good. We want to reduce our bounds so we can do more pruning. And so we're biasing towards states that we're going to quickly get our bound down. Later in search, well, as C gets smaller, or the cost bound gets smaller, then actually we have to satisfy more and more of the preferences to get a slightly better solution. So H less than C is becoming closer and closer to H all. And the heuristic guidance that we're getting, therefore, is very similar, but the cost of memory overheads are higher. So one thing that we tried doing with this is, well, let's restart using just H all after 15 minutes. 15 is an arbitrary time. Actually, we tried 5 25-minute splits and 15 minutes, but it didn't really make much difference what time band we used. So come on to our results then. So our baseline for comparison was an analogue of LPRPGP. We actually used Optic to build this on rather than LPRPGP because Optic could do net benefit planning, and we wanted to be able to make this comparison that's never been done to Kader and Geffner's net benefit domains. So we built it on that. It's basically the same thing in non-temporal domains. And we took all the non-temporal preference domains and net benefit domains from the competition, and this is working with the full range of PDDL3 preferences. We can only compare on domains with soft goals to Llama because it doesn't support all the other preferences. So these are the net benefit domains from IPC 2008 and simple preferences domains from 2006. And we added this driver log variant where you just change it so packages have to be in 2 distinct places with a certain cost. So the first set of results then. Obviously these are very highly summarised for the slides. If you want to see the results on a per domain basis, they are in the paper. So this first test, we're using alternation between the 2 open lists, and we're using p-cost. So we're not taking into account the costs of the actions in the plan. And our greedy approaches perform quite well. And as I promised to show you, all subsets, so this is all possible combinations of preferences, it doesn't scale very well. There's one exception, and that is in the trucks domain, where actually very few of the preferences lead to actions being added to the plan. So all subsets is many subsets, so you can afford to try more. So in general, lesson number 1, you don't want to try every possible combination. And since there was not much difference between length and cost there, I'll show you again, there were very similar performance, 219 problems. So I should explain, these are the number of problems on which each planner found the best or the joint best solution. So 219 problems versus 220, there's not really much to call between length and cost. So I'm doing the rest of the evaluation with length now. So what's the effect of alternation? Well, without alternation, H less than C is much worse than H all. And this actually mirrors Patrick's result as well. He was having the same problem. If we just go straight for the H less than C, we don't do very well. There are some wins and losses, but in general, especially in the domains with more complicated preferences, it's worse than doing H all. So baseline is H all. So then we tried our restarting strategy to avoid this bias problem I was talking about. So we did read by length for 15 minutes, and then we ran the baseline for 15 minutes. And in soft goal domains, the effect was very marginal. We lost 2 problems in elevators. But in the domains with real trajectory preferences, again, we find the joint best solution actually 48 more times. So restarting to avoid this bias is generally a good thing. So one more thing then, well, how does our net benefit cost help us? So this is when we add in the cost of the actions in the plan. It doesn't make a difference in these other domains because these domains don't have action costs. So that's not a surprise, it's the same heuristic. In domains with soft goals, however, it gave us a massive improvement in performance because the cost of the actions is part of the metric. So if we use some net benefit reasoning, we can get some better performance. I'm going to skip tide rating actually, I'm running out of time because I just want to talk about this comparison to Llama. So last time we did a paper on preferences, we could not compare to Llama running with the Cable and Geffen translation because we didn't support net benefit planning. So here's a planner that does net benefit and soft goals. And the answer is it's kind of mixed result. So if the difficulty is due to interesting trade-offs between which set of goals you want to achieve and which set you don't want to achieve, then actually our new approach, or indeed our baseline approach, was better than using Llama with that compilation. But if your interesting trade-off is where action costs are the important thing, mostly in plan quality, then unsurprisingly, actually, Llama is better with this compilation of soft goals into classical planning. And there was one other domain. OpenStax had action costs, but the solution cost is dominated by which soft goals you select. So in that case, it's better to use our approach. So just comparing to Llama with the Cable and Geffen translation, tied on 41 problems, Llama was better 21 times, and our approach was better 56 times. So I guess the takeaway messages here is that soft goals can be compiled away. Sometimes that's a good idea, sometimes you actually get some benefit from reasoning about it. And I've run out of time, so I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.